From the origins of how the company got started in 91, what was the philosophy of building that organization? What was the role of people at that time, and how has that evolved a little bit?
The founding ideal was really was about impact. The world really didn't need another consulting company, right? Back in that genre in that day. And when our founders were, Jerry and Stu, were thinking about the founding ideals of the company, they really focused on values, culture, and purpose before they had any people in the company. Why would you have a company, and what would you do with it? So the original purpose is changed over the years, but it's all in the same genre. And the idea of people and talent, that if you could have really smart people and you could have a differentiating approach and you could put those two things together, well, you'd have the ingredients of a pretty great company right there. So Sapient's always been very mission focused, right? So you can talk in the different genres about the mission, but it's a mission you're on, and it's just a big team, right? And we're a big team trying to accomplish something, and it's always sat in that context, and culture's been a huge part. People debate if culture scales, but I think it does if you tend to it and you design it, right? And early on, I think, we've been the study of several MBA cases in culture, including like Harvard Business Review, right? And culture means different things. You can see cultures that you like or dislike. But I think one of the defining things is if you have a set of people that are focused on the same mission and culture enables them to really go after that, you've got something special.
What is the difference between strategy and execution when it comes to actually making it a reality?
Do you really use purpose and vision and values to make decisions? Or is it something that's on the wall and it's a beautiful poster, but the decision process is actually something different, right? Do you reward somebody for being open? Do you reward somebody for pointing out a problem, a challenge, for bringing it to a client, or don't you, right? To really design culture, and let's say culture is a connection of purpose, vision, values, behaviors, fabric, tradition. There's a lot that goes into this, right? But I think when you really think about culture, to make it genuine and authentic, your leaders need to live it every day, and you need to actually have measurement and consequences. So let's take your classic great performer that's not a cultural fit, right, for whatever particular reason. And if you're not willing to exit that person, if you will, and say this is not the company for you, well, then you're not really serious, right? If a goal around profitability or something that you tend to more than you tend to your value system, well, people are very smart, right? They'll obviously tune into what you really care about. So very specifically, as people join Sapient, they spend their first week in Sapient Start, which is really about culture, values, purpose, vision, and all the things that we care about. How you reinforce that as the company grows. When you're looking at development, promotion, compensation, is culture and values part of what you measure or not? It's really being serious about that matters, right? Because a lot can change, the business can be going well or poorly, but I think culture can carry you over time.
In your middle and top management specifically, you have huge levels of retention. What's that magic?
It's all cultural, but I think it's a connection of ambition, right? So you're on a mission, you're out to achieve a vision, to fulfill on a purpose, and you're united in that cause. That's very empowering to people, that we really care about the mission. And if you study some of our history, I had an investor a couple weeks ago that was in my office saying, we've watched you guys over 20 years, nobody's transformed like Sapient. Just hands down. So how do you do that? And it was the same answer. It's culture, it's our commitment to a vision and our courage to go after it, even if it gets bumpy, right? And I think that's both difficult, but also empowering at the same time, because if you really have that courage, I think people always want to be part of something bigger than themselves. We have People Success that focuses on how do you grow and develop people, but I also have a person that sits in my office that is our global leader for culture. So he really focuses on, as the company scales, how do we really design and tend to the culture? So that when we grow up, which will be a long, long time, but when we grow up, you like who you are.
People success in itself is a very interesting terminology for what traditionally is called the human resources team. And you have a culture team, which is a separate team who reports directly to you, which is very interesting. Is this something that, again, was from the beginning in the organization, or that's something you've incorporated over time?
The idea of not having HRs from the beginning, it's evolved over time, The idea of human resources to me is very commoditized. It defines you're a resource, you're to be used, as part of an equation. And that, it's just not who we are, right? It's hard to stand behind that idea, as opposed to, our entire success is based on tremendously talented people across the world, right? You couldn't have a more precious or valuable input into what we do, and they shape the company, they design the culture. We are the people that we have. As a large team of 11,000 people, how do we go after our vision? So that's been there from the beginning. We've thought about it differently in different genres. So people success has really been named that way to say, that's a group of people that stand for the success of our people and making sure people can develop across the world. You also need to develop design culture on a broader context, right? That has a lot more to do with our ability to build the company 3-5 years. How do your values change, to fit your context? Because your context changes over time. A lot of the ideals have been from the beginning, although they've probably evolved a lot.
How much of your personal time as a global CEO goes into people's success?
Quite a bit. As I said, I share an office with our global head of culture. So we spend a lot of time on how do you think about the development of people worldwide, how do you think about the development of leadership and culture. Because for a company like us, the biggest gap we'll have in growth is the ability to grow leaders. And if you want to build a really strong culture, you build it one person at a time. If you think about a business like services that's all about intellectual capital, it's all about really bright people around the globe, how do you connect those people? How do those people come together to make an impact that's much larger? You think about a true network effect, right? A true network effect is, the sum of the network creates an expansive opportunity. So to do that, you have to have great thought, right? And the people business has changed so much because it is distributed globally. And then you think about, well, are your communications processes up to par? Not just in internal communications, but if you're trying to do an assignment for a client in marketing or in global markets, how do you connect skills and smart people all across the world? That's process, it's communications. But globally distributed talent, you have to have great approach and process and communications to do that, right? And I think the world's really changed in that way. I believe that one of your most sustainable advantages over a long period of time is creativity. Your ability to think about and do things differently, right? And companies that have been great at creativity, whatever business they're in, have, I believe, really outperformed over time and continue to reinvent their business. And I believe that people talk about things like, obviously technology drives change and creativity, and all those things are true, but it's really people. People and talent across the world have driven everything, they've built everything that we know, right? So, and I do believe that companies have to really grasp the new creativity, right, which is globally distributed talent, massive changes in technology trends, and how those things come together to actually create advantage.
How do you sustain that creativity? Because organizations have been able to be creative at a particular level of success, and then you kind of...
Yeah, you can't, they're one-hit wonders, as we would say. They have a period of time that goes real well and it doesn't. So I believe that you can't can creativity, you can't make a formula, you can't make a process or a recipe. I do believe it comes back to probably a couple things. One is, do you create an environment? Do you create a petri dish that interesting and cool things can happen? So you have to have a culture that appreciates it. So we're just talking about upstairs in the conclave. I believe curiosity really drives success. So if you build a culture of really curious people and you allow them to have a petri dish and have a multi-perspective across geographies and disciplines, you've got an environment that's more likely to drive high levels of creativity, right? But more likely is the key word, because creativity, obviously, it's an inspiration. It happens in a moment. And there's big ideas that people class as innovation, big changes in the world, like the invention of the iPhone, right? Those kind of ideas. But a lot of creativity comes in little increments at a time. And all of a sudden you look back over a few years and wow, right? So if everybody's really always striving to make everything a little better, be curious about the connections and things. The whole world is getting so much more connected, right? So if you're curious about those connections and trying to make things a little better, a little more connected, I think you're on the right path.